welcome back to Cruda Headset, a podcast where we get deep on all things live event related. I'm your co-host, Michelle Michelson of Prompster. We're an event services and teleprompter company based in New York and soon to be Los Angeles. And my co-host today is...
Hi, I'm Alex Alcantara of Ruby and Citrine. We're a presentation and design company out of Cary, North Carolina.
I didn't mean to say today because you're always my co-host, but make sure everyone gets that. So anyways, today we're here to chat about food. Frankly, it's my favorite thing to chat about. So I'm glad that we could actually dedicate an entire episode around meal breaks, food quality, dietary accommodations, and our favorite meals. And also our favorite thing ever.
Coffee.
Yes, indeed.
Before we get into it, though, to make sure that we're all on the same page, the expectation for any show is that we will come across at some point a catered meal or two or three provided by the client. These generally happen on longer engagements, working long hours, especially those early morning starts where you're not going to get many breaks and you already know what type of day that's going to be. So strap in because I'm sure this is going to be a really long one and it is going to be full of great opinions. And we want to hear your opinion as well at the end.
All right, so I'm going to kick this off with some positives. Our favorite meals on site. This is a pretty easy one for me. I went to South Korea a few months ago now, and OMG, I have never had consistently high quality meals than I did on this job. We're talking nigiri, fresh protein, squashes, salads, grains, lotus chips, Korean fried chicken, which I had actually never had before, so shame on me, and glass noodle dishes, and I could just go on and on. Everything was crafted with such detail, care. It was super well-rounded, and hands down, I would say the best catered experience I've had so far.
I would say that my favorite foods have always been on those shows in Paris and Milan, most recently. Everything was super incredible, fresh and simple. And, something about those European countries, they know how to do food right. And we're definitely going to talk about that later.
Let's take a closer look at dietary accommodations. So this one is very dear to my heart because I have an autoimmune, and I know so many other Americans and event workers are in a similar predicament. We have lots of stomach issues, joint issues, etc. And the difference between a good show and a bad show is highly dependent on the meals. So I always appreciate clients who preemptively ask about dietary accommodations before I even have to get there and ask. So it's even better too when I don't have to track someone down on site just to make sure that I'm getting the catered meal that was told that I was going to get ahead of time. Half the battle is getting folks to actually bring out that meal, which I've noticed. So that can, expend about 10, 15 minutes of your meal break just trying to track someone down to grab it, especially if they're not going to be able to accommodate you through the buffet. So in a perfect world, you'd see hotel catering meals that are more ingredient driven that can satisfy folks with all sorts of differing accommodations. On some gigs, this happens, but it's more of an exception than the rule. And honestly, I'm not asking for what I had in South Korea. I understand that that's a big ask. But it would be great if we could see things where you just had a simply made protein, veggies, carb, basic meal components, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to find. You have things that are very dressed in ways where you can eat some of the elements in that meal, but then some of them don't really work for your accommodation. So it'd be nice if we could just see more simple statements. Kind of crafting our meals together, sort of like a Chipotle style meal would be fantastic. And I can kind of pick and choose the options that work for me, and then people can pick the options that work for them. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I totally agree. When I was a vegetarian for like 6 years, it was super hard in some venues to get a decent hot meal. One time in the Bahamas, it was just like a different potato dish every single lunch with like a small side salad until dinner. And then my agency lead would actually, take us out. And I was super appreciative of that, but it was just a little bit crazy that the regular catering did not have these options. I would say though, it has changed a ton, at least on my end, in the last 5 to 6 years, where more of my agency clients and even direct clients are putting more thought into the catering and requesting dietary restrictions before going on site. So I've lucked out for sure and had some amazing food over that time. I would definitely also say that some people out there are going to think we're probably a little spoiled after this convo. I know I've definitely heard that on site a few times where the client catered super amazing meals and the local AV people were astonished that there was even food and they were super grateful and worked so hard because of it.
Spoiled, I would beg to differ on that one because we're asking for adequate meals because we're not really given any downtime to go get them on our own. You would hope that they'd be able to cater something that you could actually eat. If I don't get to eat throughout the day, I'm definitely going to be a bit of a cranky person. So just asking for something that's going to help me work in a dark ballroom for 15 hours in a day, I don't think it's like that much to ask for. Personally, my health comes first and foremost before whatever we're doing on site. So if people do want the best work out of me, and I know for other people, I would hope that they would be able to treat the crew with just some humanity, really, and feed us a proper meal that fits inside of our dietary accommodations. We live in a country where you would hope that our health and nutrition would be sort of at the forefront throughout the day. I understand that we're there to work, but work and humanity and life balance, all these things sort of go hand in hand. And that kind of leads us to food quality, something that I think is kind of lacking in the United States. Europe and Asia, as I've experienced having worked in those places, tend to have a little bit higher nutritious meals. They're more basic, they're more well executed. In the US, we tend to process our food to death. What we have given up in terms of quality, we have traded in for maximum output and profit. We could do an entire episode on capitalism alone, but it's truly a problem that is outside of the control of our clients. In general, I would love to see event producers and clients do away with meals that are centered around flat meat or processed cold cuts. I don't think it's great to be feeding people food that the CDC designates as a carcinogen. I know a lot of folks on site refuse to eat it because it's super high in sodium. And a lot of the times it's because their doctor has told them that, or their medical professional has told them that these are the types of foods that they should be avoiding. Another thing that irks me is when instead of catering a full meal, you have people kind of creating shortcuts and ordering pizza to fill in those stop gaps where they kind of messed up with the catering, or if it's just a pasta only or just fully carb centric meal. These are cool things that I love to enjoy on my free time, but it's not really something that I would consider a catered meal that's going to accommodate everybody. That being said, the clients, I think, are the ones that can really, and us really, I mean, all of us in the event space are the ones that can help start to shift these expectations. Unfortunately, a lot of these hotels are at the hands of big conglomerates like Sodexo. They're the ones that control a lot of the food supply, the quality, the ingredients. So it's really up to us as workers to demand that higher quality and the clients to advocate for that as well. We are just really asking for like fresher foods that are prepared on site to order, more veggies, more fruits. Sometimes the on site fruits are just like really, really sad. Like they're very flavorless, and you know they're like that gross, like red Macintosh apple that has like no flavor.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I definitely noticed the food quality issue when I was fortunate enough to join a crew in Milan and Madrid last year. And even though there was definitely some some mishaps, I really thought the food was super amazing. Super amazing ingredients, so fresh. I ate so much cheese in Italy. It was ridiculous. And I never had a stomach issue. If you give me two pieces of sliced cheese here, I'm going to die. Even the pasta in Italy, like obviously it's pasta in Italy, so it's going to be amazing. But one thing I did notice is that in the US, I have tons of intolerances to pasta and bread, and certain things just bloat me really badly. But over there, it was like pasta and bread paradise for me. So I never really had any of those stomach issues whatsoever. It just is a true testament to the fact that they just do things differently there. I will shift here to talk about one thing that I did notice that was not so great in the UK, that is amazing in America, and definitely a part of our culture. And it's coffee and tea and having water for the crew backstage. I don't know about you or your shows, Michelle, but there have been quite a few in the last 2 years that have been like super dry backstage. I think maybe this has to do with the pricing of the coffee stations. You know how like insanely expensive those things are. But I also think that it's a part to do with the direct clients wanting to have water bottles all over the place because they're trying to be more eco-friendly. And the crew often does not get the memo about this, and so we're sitting backstage dying because we're parched. Or if they do get water for the room, it's usually either in the back, like where people are coming in, and we're back of house, so we can't even get access to it. And then we have to wait until there's a break to go get our, jugs filled and go backstage. I actually think the funniest times are probably when they actually do get water bottles for just the speakers that are going on stage. And then they tell us, they keep that water backstage. And then they tell us that we can't have any part of it. So we're like, "Where's the water?" Um, and a lot of times, companies that allow plastic water bottles will allow soda everywhere. So you're getting tons and tons of soda in the room, but you can't live solely on Diet Coke, even though I love Diet Coke. I just really think that making sure your crew has coffee, water, tea is essential, and it makes our lives so much happier. Like you don't understand, infinitely more happy when I have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in my day, especially on those really early mornings. Skip the croissants, give me coffee first.
Well, I will disagree with you should always have a little bit of like sustenance in your belly before you drink coffee. Otherwise, it can give you reflux. But anyways, I think doing a coffee run is such a nice gesture and it's a great morale boost. It's just an easy way to make people happy. I know that my shows are much easier and I'm way more in command when I have a morning cup of coffee. And sometimes I almost have to like create a game plan on site because I just don't know if the client's going to provide that coffee. So I have to get like those cans of coffee, or I need to like scope out where like the closest coffee shop or Starbucks or whatever they have on site is, because it's just not guaranteed. And sometimes when they do offer coffee, it's like really weak and like really poorly brewed, and it just tastes like blah.
Water, like
Water. Yeah, like flavored coffee, nasty water. That
yeah.
ugh. Or those. I'm really not. I know a lot of people. This might be controversial, but I'm not a fan of Keurig.
It's a hit or miss for me. It really depends.
I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. Even though, like Nespresso machines, I don't know. I'm not a huge. Some of it been okay, but anyways, I always have to figure it out because it's not a guarantee. Even though I really feel like it should be a guarantee, especially if you want me to come in at 6 a.m. That coffee should be ready to go.
Piping hot.
Piping hot,
Piping hot.
ready to go.
Ready to go. Yeah, but talking about the coffee too, like these companies need to also realize that they should also have alternative milks available at
Yes.
all times. The amount of times that I've gone on site and I really can't have milk. I will die. And they just have milk and half and half. And they're like, "Oh, well you could just use half and half." No, that's still dairy.
Who's using half and half these days?
A lot of people use half and half. They come out with like gallons of half and half on site at some of these places. Yeah.
It's
It's
gotta
pretty
be. It's
funny
gotta
actually.
be the Xers. I mean, are the Z's? They don't even know what a half and half is. They're just like oat and almond.
There's plenty of Z's that love half and half.
Should do a poll. Anyways, I work with this one company that brings a Cuban coffee maker on site, and honestly, it's one of the best things. They have this little craft and they like clank it around,
Mhm.
and the clients they love it. The crew looks forward to it, and they make it like such a priority throughout the day. And it's just this easy little gesture. It's this fun thing that they do, and everyone loves it. And
Yep.
I think more crews should create these sort of, even if it's not a coffee thing, these little cultural things that they do just to make things a
Right.
little more fun. It'd be great if they're surrounded, like if it's around food, because I think that makes people happy. Also, this company does another cool thing where they have these plastic bins of snacks and they
Yeah.
throw little fun things in there and you like see what you get in your bin and stuff.
There's one agency I work with where they always do snacks that are regional snacks. We went to LA. They know that a lot of us were from the East Coast and so they just had a whole bin of like international snacks. It was pretty fun.
It's fun and
Yeah.
it doesn't cost much. It's just a nice little gesture.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we're going to transition into the actual timings of our breaks and
Yeah.
how we should actually be able to experience them. And one thing that I think is super, super important, and some crews actually fail to do this sometimes, is having a table somewhere away from your equipment that you actually get to have your meal, not
Yep.
at your workstation. The meal break that you have, the one meal break that you're getting throughout the day typically, should be away from your actual work. You should be able to step away for at least 30 minutes, and that's minimal, away from your workstation and have that catered meal. Or if they want to walk away, giving you at least an hour, hour 15 to
Mhm.
actually walk away and go get the meal. And one thing is that you should only be doing walkaway meals when you're at a site, and this is for the clients, where someone can actually walk away and find something without walking more than 15, 20 minutes to go
Yeah.
eat the meal. Because whenever you're doing any sort of a walkaway, you have to account for that additional time because they have to order the meal, they have to wait for the meal, they have to walk to and fro. Ideally, in a perfect world that is Europe, there will All I'm really asking for is maybe an additional 15 to 20 minutes because
Yeah.
they're not going to do 2 hours because that would be blasphemy in the United States. But that's okay. Just know that you can't make a walkaway lunch an hour and expect for someone to actually be able to take
I
advantage of
mean,
it. Wow.
yeah, some of these hotels don't even have anything around them.
No, nothing. Or
Or
maybe,
you're
or if they do, it's the only thing that people can eat. So the line's 20, 30 minutes, or it's a sit down. So
or it's expensive. Like how much they
that's
don't give us a lot in per diem and you're asking like one meal in at lunch is gonna be like $50 sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I would love to see meal breaks going into the future. Also, Alex, didn't you have a story about getting to a
Oh
job
god.
at 5 a.m.? I don't know if you want to tell that.
There was a show that I worked where the producer, he was an older gentleman. He was great. He was really nice. I will start with that. And we had two other people that were with us. And we were working this show and we had to get up at 5 a.m. every single day. And it was a week-long show. And by the second day, I'm starving because I'm like, okay, we've consistently woken up at 5 o'clock. And that hotel that we were in, like you needed a car to get anywhere or on campus. Everything opened at 6. So if I'm walking into a job at 5 a.m. and nothing's open till 6, my expectation is that you're going to have something for people to eat for that 5 a.m. call. Well, I mentioned it on the second day because I was like, we didn't have any food the first day till like 11 o'clock in the morning, even though we got there at 5. I was like, well, this is not going to work. So the next day, but I asked the producer, I was like, hey, so can we go get breakfast? Like, is there any breakfast offered? Like, what's going on with the meals? And he literally looked at me and was like, oh, you hungry? Okay. And he goes into his bag and he just offers me a kind bar. And he's like, you can have this for breakfast. And he was very serious. He was also not doing it maliciously. Like, this was just what he offered. I found it really ridiculous.
Very inconsiderate. Don't want to say that, but we've definitely seen a lot of people who don't take into account some of the basic human needs that people have.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully
I
that changes
think
as we talk about it. That is why we have this conversation because we all
well,
are, I think, thinking some of these things. And
right.
we don't have a consistency across the board because we don't have any sort of union or anything, by state or rules or any sort of community that we can talk about these things. So that's why we are doing this. I think this is very
I
helpful.
know sometimes also like you're sitting backstage and you're like, when am I gonna get my meal? And
Mhm.
when are we gonna even get released to go get a meal?
Yeah, and that's kind of the unfortunate thing is there's a lot of uncertainty throughout the day. There's plenty of folks out there that do kind of live on some sort of routine. Like to know ahead of time just because they like to plan a little bit as
Hmm.
far as like when my breakfast is going to be, when my lunch, dinner. And a lot of crews do give schedules. Sometimes those things flux because a lot of times they're doing rehearsals right on top of your lunch. And then you get
Right.
to that time and you're like, I thought we were going to go to lunch, but it looks like you're asked saying the client can come in like right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, you kind of get a little mentally juddered, I'd say, by it.
Well, that also brings you into like meal breaks though, like meal breaks and like penalties. I know some people do penalties if they can't walk away for a meal.
I'm definitely somebody who's trying to sort of create that and bring it into the culture of events
Hmm.
as far as if you're going to have someone have a start time, their break needs to be within like that 6 hour period of when they
Hmm.
get to work. And if you're not going to let them walk away for more than 30 minutes, if you're going to make them do the meal at their workstation, then I do think that they should be charged a meal penalty of X amount of dollars to sort of
100%.
compensate for the fact that they're not able to get that time to themselves.
Yep.
So I think that really should be standard. I think it's standard in the video or film production world, and that also needs to kind of start filtering into events. When I give clients information about our company, I give them a terms and conditions, which I'll be
Right.
updating for 2024. And basically, it just gives all those breakdowns. And I know it's kind of lengthy and some people might gloss over it, but that's one of the things that we put in there is that there needs to be a break of at least 30 minutes away from the station, that we already talked about all that stuff. So I think that's really important. And I think that also is something that is going to help the morale and mental health of fellow event workers. All right, so this kind of brings me into something else that happens a lot of times is that we get access to our clients' food. And I feel like sometimes there's a strange kind of stigma and weirdness associated with it. Kind of, I would say, maybe a second classing of crew up against end client.
Mhm.
And I don't think there should be any of this weirdness. I think that the crew should have access to client food. And if it's sitting out in a hallway and there's clients going for it, I think crew should be able to go and grab a soda from the table or a snack. And we all know a lot of the time that this food winds up getting trashed or thrown out, and there's a lot of waste. So I don't understand why there's this second classing of people from grabbing something at a table, or if client has already eaten their meal, I think crew should be able to have access to it as well. I know
Mhm.
sometimes these rules are created by the actual hotels, but I
Mhm.
feel like we need to stop categorizing people and making them feel sort of lesser than they are. I think it's strange to sort of create these hierarchies of these sort of like preconceived notions that people have certain roles and categories that we're
Mhm.
supposed to sort of fill. And it's food. We all should have access to food, and there shouldn't be any hierarchy to who has access to food. I think there's something really weird and strange in that dynamic. If there's dry chicken, yo, we all get the dry chicken. No, fried chicken for the masses. And I think this is something that subconsciously happens, or we sort of feel like happens just because of the workflow and how things have always been. But we don't always have to do things how they've always been, and we can change the culture around food. And I'm done with my political.
Yeah, you won the nomination, Michelle. Don't worry. I will say that we very early on in my career, I used to make this a game with some of my fellow AV people where we would try to sneak as much off of the attendees' tables because we thought it was super funny. Where we were just like, why can't we have a little bit of the M&Ms that are in an open bowl? This was way before COVID, also. Like there was things that would just fall on the ground, and people would just leave so much food behind. And so we would just go by the tables and just grab like just little nabs and see if the producer would catch up on us. It was super funny. I always love that. It has improved, but we're definitely far away from it completely changing. But I hopefully, people talking about this
I think so.
will change their opinions.
I think so. I think it's a conversation worth having. And
Yep.
that sort of wraps things up for today. What's for lunch? I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion we've had. And if you have any comments or things that you would like to add to this topic, please let us know. We are both on LinkedIn.
And if you have any opinions, we'd love to hear about them, whether you follow us socially or just email us.
Our podcast is on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify Podcasts, and we hope to see you soon. We're going to have a couple new episodes coming down the pike, and then we're going to have our 10th episode where we're actually going to take your questions. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll talk more about that soon. Anyways, that's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.